curious about the Indigenous peoples of Canada? Join us to uncover powerful stories, living traditions, and vibrant cultures. Don't forget to like and subscribe to walk this path with us. Long before cities and roads, there was the land, what many now call Canada, but what the first peoples know as Turtle Island. Turtle Island comes from ancient stories, a great turtle carrying the world, a symbol of creation and deep connection to the earth. This land is alive, filled with spirits, stories, and the memories of ancestors. For thousands of years, hundreds of nations cared for and respected this place, developing complex societies rooted in their relationship with the land. Indigenous history is not gone. It's a living force, shaping the present and guiding the future. To understand the peoples of this land, you must first understand the land itself, the first character in our story, the source of our strength and resilience. Walk with us, see Turtle Island through our eyes, and feel its heartbeat that still pulses today. There are three great Indigenous families: First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, each with unique histories, languages, and cultures. First Nations are over 600 diverse communities, from the Mi'kmaq in the east to the Haida in the west, each shaped by their environment. The Inuit, distinct from First Nations, thrive in the Arctic, resilient, ingenious, and deeply connected to the land and sea. The Métis emerged from the union of First Nations women and European fur traders, creating a new nation with its own language and vibrant culture. These three groups are not a monolith, but a mosaic of hundreds of cultures and nations. To speak of Indigenous people is to speak of incredible diversity and resilience. On this journey, we meet them as distinct families, each with their own voice and truth. This is a living story, carried in the hearts and voices of our people today. For too long, our stories have been told by others. Now is the time to listen. We invite you to hear from those who hold these stories, not just history, but journeys of spirit, survival, and strength. You'll meet leaders, advocates, artists, and everyday people, the true heart of our nations. Their stories are the threads of our shared Indigenous identity. Open your heart and mind. Let go of what you think you know. Welcome to our story, alive, evolving, and essential to the future of this land. First Nations are not a single people, but a mosaic of hundreds of distinct nations, each with its own territory, language, and way of life. From the Haudenosaunee in the east to the Blackfoot on the plains and the Haida on the Pacific, diversity is immense. Each nation was shaped by its land. Master carvers of the coast, buffalo hunters of the prairies, expert trappers of the north. There was no single dwelling, dress, or belief system, just a tapestry of human experience. To understand First Nations is to embrace this diversity and let go of stereotypes. Each nation has its own story, heroes, and relationship with the world. The most important truth: there is not one story, but many, each worthy of being heard. Our histories were not written. They were spoken, sung, and performed, passed down through oral tradition. Elders and storytellers were the keepers of memory, teaching law, history, and morality through stories. Oral tradition is a living library, where every word matters and every story holds meaning. Trickster tales, creation stories, and epic histories taught us how to live and understand the world. Even today, storytelling remains central. When an elder dies, a library burns. The oral tradition is not a relic, but a living practice that guides and inspires us. Through these stories, we connect directly to the voices of our ancestors. For First Nations, the relationship with the land is the foundation of everything. It is a bond that is spiritual, physical, and deeply personal. We do not see the land as a resource to be exploited or a property to be owned. We see it as our mother, the source of all life. This belief shaped every aspect of our traditional societies. The land provides us with food, with medicine, with shelter, and with the materials for our art and ceremonies. In return, we have a sacred responsibility to be its stewards, to care for it, and to ensure that it remains healthy for the 7 generations to come after us. This stewardship was not a passive role. It involved a deep and scientific understanding of the environment gained over thousands of years of careful observation. Our ancestors knew the migration patterns of the animals, the best times to plant and harvest, and which plants could be used for medicine. They used practices like controlled burning to renew forests and create better habitats for game animals. They understood the intricate web of life and knew that taking too much of any one thing would upset the delicate balance. This knowledge, often called traditional ecological knowledge, or tech, is a sophisticated science based on respect and reciprocity with the natural world. This sacred relationship is expressed in our ceremonies. Before a hunter would offer prayers and tobacco, asking the spirit of the animal for its life, and promising that no part of it would be wasted. When gathering medicines from the forest, we offer thanks to the plant and to the Creator, taking only what is needed. These are not empty rituals. They are acts of profound respect that acknowledge our place within the circle of life, not above it. We see ourselves as the youngest brother of creation, with a duty to learn from and protect all the beings that were here before us: the plants, the animals, the rivers, and the rocks. This worldview is fundamentally different from the one that arrived with the newcomers. The idea of drawing lines on a map, of buying and selling pieces of our mother, was completely foreign and deeply troubling to our ancestors. They could not understand how anyone could claim to own the air, the water, or the land itself. This difference in understanding is at the very heart of the conflicts that would come to define the relationship between First Nations and the governments of Canada. Our identity is inseparable from the land. To lose our land is to lose a part of ourselves. The arrival of European ships on the shores of Turtle Island marked the beginning of a profound and often painful transformation. At first, many of our nations greeted the newcomers with curiosity and generosity. We saw them as different, perhaps even lost, and our traditions often compelled us to help them survive in this new land. We shared our knowledge of the environment, taught them how to find food, and showed them the routes through the vast wilderness. We engaged in trade, exchanging our furs and knowledge for new goods like metal pots, tools, and cloth. This early period was one of mutual discovery and, in many places, of partnership. This initial relationship was built largely around the fur trade. For generations, alliances were formed between First Nations and European powers, particularly the French and the English. We became essential partners in a global economy, our trapping skills and knowledge of the land fueling a demand for furs in Europe. This trade brought significant changes to our way of life. It introduced new technologies and goods, but it also shifted economic focus, altered traditional territories, and sometimes created conflict between nations as competition for resources grew. The newcomers were no longer just visitors. They were becoming a permanent and powerful presence on our lands. However, as the number of settlers grew, their intentions began to change. They were no longer just interested in trade. They wanted the land itself. The spirit of partnership began to fade, replaced by a desire for control and dominance. The newcomers brought with them diseases to which our people had no immunity, like smallpox and measles. These sicknesses swept through our communities like wildfire, devastating our populations and killing millions. In some cases, entire nations were wiped out, and with them, their languages, their stories, and their unique knowledge. This was a catastrophe on a scale that is difficult to comprehend, a great dying that silenced so many voices forever. The arrival of the ships, therefore, represents a great turning point in our history. It was the beginning of a long and difficult chapter defined by loss: the loss of life, the loss of land, and the loss of autonomy. The world our ancestors had known for millennia was being changed forever, often without their consent and through great violence. The generosity and partnership that marked the early days of contact were slowly being eroded by a tide of settlement and a colonial mindset that saw our people and our ways of life as obstacles to progress. This was the dawn of a new struggle for survival. As the desire for land grew, the British Crown and later the Canadian government began to enter into treaties with First Nations. From our perspective, these treaties were sacred agreements made between sovereign nations. They were meant to establish a framework for sharing the land and its resources peacefully. Our elders, who entered into these agreements, saw them as promises sealed by ceremony, tobacco, and the word of the Creator. They were about forging a lasting relationship, a covenant based on mutual respect, honor, and a commitment to live side by side in peace. For us, a treaty was a sacred bond, meant to last for as long as the sun shines, the grass grows, and the rivers flow. However, the understanding of the other side was often very different. For the colonial governments, treaties were primarily legal tools for acquiring land. There were often huge differences in language and culture at the negotiating table. Our leaders spoke of sharing and stewardship, while the government agents spoke of ownership and surrender. The written text of the treaties, recorded in English, often did not reflect the full spirit and intent of the oral agreements that our people had made. We believed we were agreeing to share the land, while the government believed we were giving it up entirely, in exchange for small reserves, one-time payments, and certain promises. The history of Canada is filled with these broken promises. Many of the commitments made to our people in the treaties, promises of education, healthcare, and protection of our rights to hunt and fish, were ignored or deliberately underfunded for generations. The land we were promised to share was taken for settlement, for railways, for mining, and for logging, while our own communities were confined to small parcels of land called reserves. These reserves were often on the least productive land, isolating our people from their traditional territories and economies. The sacred agreements, meant to ensure our survival and prosperity, became instruments of poverty and control. This legacy of broken treaties continues to be a source of deep pain and conflict today. Many First Nations are still fighting in courts and at negotiation tables to have their treaty rights recognized and honored in the way our ancestors understood them. It is a struggle for justice, a fight to hold Canada accountable to the foundational agreements upon which this country was built. Understanding the treaties, both their sacred intent and their painful betrayal, is essential to understanding the relationship between First Nations and Canada, and the long road we are still walking towards reconciliation and true partnership. Of all the injustices inflicted upon our people, none casts a longer or darker shadow than the residential school system. For over a century, the Canadian government and various churches operated a network of boarding schools for First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children. The stated goal of these schools was education, but their real purpose was assimilation. The government's own policy was to kill the Indian in the child. They wanted to erase our languages, our spiritual beliefs, and our cultures, to sever the link between one generation and the next. It was a policy of cultural genocide, enacted against defenseless children. Children were forcibly taken from their families and communities, sometimes by police, and sent to schools hundreds of kilometers away. Once there, they were forbidden to speak their own languages. If they did, they were often severely punished. Their hair was cut, their traditional clothes were replaced with uniforms, and they were given new European names. They were separated from their siblings and subjected to a harsh regime of neglect, loneliness, and abuse. Many children suffered physical, emotional, and sexual abuse at the hands of the staff who were supposed to be caring for them. Thousands never returned home, dying from disease, malnutrition, or after trying to escape. The impact of this system has been devastating and has echoed through generations. The children who survived and returned to their communities were often strangers. They had lost their language and their connection to their culture. They had not learned how to be parents from their own families, having only known cruelty and neglect. This created a cycle of trauma, what we call intergenerational trauma, that continues to affect our families and communities today. The pain, the anger, the grief, and the loss caused by the residential schools are a deep wound on the soul of our people, a wound that has yet to fully heal. Speaking about this history is incredibly difficult, but it is necessary. In recent years, the truth has begun to come out thanks to the courage of the survivors who have shared their stories. The discovery of unmarked graves at the sites of former schools has shown all of Canada the terrible truth that our people have always known. Acknowledging this dark chapter is a critical step. It is not about blame, it is about truth. It is about honoring the children who were lost, validating the pain of the survivors, and understanding how this history continues to shape the challenges our communities face as we work to heal and reclaim what was taken from us. Despite everything we have faced, the diseases, the loss of land, the broken treaties, and the trauma of residential schools, we are still here. Our spirit has not been broken. Our cultures have not been erased. In fact, across Turtle Island today, there is a powerful movement of cultural revitalization and resurgence. After generations of being forced into silence, our voices are rising again. We are reclaiming our languages, relearning our ceremonies, and teaching our children the stories and traditions that give us our strength. This is a time of incredible healing, creativity, and hope for First Nations. This rebirth can be seen everywhere. Language immersion programs are bringing our ancestral tongues back to life, with elders working patiently with young people to pass on the words that connect us to our worldview. Artists are using both traditional and contemporary forms to tell our stories, creating stunning works of painting, carving, beadwork, and film that challenge old stereotypes and express a modern Indigenous identity. Musicians are blending traditional drumming and singing with modern genres like rock and hip-hop, creating new sounds that speak to the experiences of our youth. The powwow trail is vibrant, bringing communities together to celebrate our cultures through dance, song, and fellowship. This resilience is embodied by leaders like Chief Dan George, an actor, and a chief of the Tsleil-Waututh Nation. In the 1960s and 70s, he used his platform to speak eloquently about the pain of his people, but also about their enduring dignity and strength. In his famous Lament for Confederation, he spoke of taking back his culture and his pride. His words inspired a generation and helped to spark a renewed sense of purpose and identity among our people. He showed the world that we were not a dying race, but a people with a rich past and a determined future, ready to stand tall once again. The journey is far from over. We still face many challenges, from poverty and poor housing to the ongoing fight for our rights and lands. But there is a powerful spirit of determination that flows through our nations. We are not defined solely by our trauma. We are defined by our resilience. We are rebuilding our nations, healing our communities, and asserting our rightful place as the original peoples of this land. The fires of our cultures, which were once forced to burn low, are now burning brightly once more, lighting the path forward for our children and for all the generations yet to come. Journey with us to the homeland of the Inuit, a vast territory known as Inuit Nunangat, the land, water, and ice where Inuit live. For the Inuit, this land is a vibrant, living entity. It is our home, our provider, and our teacher. The frozen ocean is our highway in winter. The sea in summer is our garden, providing life. We live by the rhythms of the seasons. Our ancestors developed a deep body of knowledge. Inuit Kaujimajatukangat, or IQ, encompasses everything from predicting weather patterns to understanding animals. It is a holistic system passed down through generations. It is about living in balance and with respect for the powerful spirits that inhabit our world. Inuit Nunangat is our church, our university, and our home. It is the source of our strength and the heart of our culture. Life in the Arctic demands ingenuity and resourcefulness. For thousands of years, Inuit have been masters of innovation, creating everything from the materials the land provided. Think of the kajak, which many know as a kayak, a sleek hunting vessel built from driftwood or bone and covered in sealskin, perfectly designed for silent movement through icy waters. Our clothing was a testament to our ingenuity, allowing us to stay warm and dry in the extreme cold. We crafted parkas, trousers, and boots from caribou and sealskin. Of course, the most iconic symbol of Inuit ingenuity is the igloo. Far from being a simple dome of snow, a properly built igloo is a sophisticated shelter that uses the insulating properties of snow to create a warm and comfortable home. The body heat of the people inside, along with a small soapstone lamp called a kullik, could raise the temperature far above freezing. This crescent-shaped lamp, carved from soapstone, burned seal or whale oil with a moss wick. It was the center of the home, providing light, heat, and a means to cook food. Every aspect of our material culture was a product of deep knowledge and respect for our resources. In the vast and challenging landscape of the Arctic, no one could survive alone. The most important tool for survival has always been the community. Cooperation, sharing, and kinship are the bedrock values of Inuit society. Our entire culture is built around the understanding that the well-being of the group is more important than the success of any single individual. When a hunter was successful, the meat was not his alone. It was shared throughout the entire community, ensuring that everyone, From the youngest child to the oldest elder had food to eat. This practice, known as nikikatuk, is a sacred responsibility and a source of great pride. This spirit of collaboration was essential in every part of life. Building a camp, hunting large animals like whales, and defending against predators all required people to work together seamlessly. Families were interconnected through complex kinship ties, creating a strong social safety net. Children were not raised by their parents alone, but by the entire community. Elders were revered as the keepers of wisdom and knowledge, their guidance essential for the group's survival. Everyone had a role to play, and every contribution was valued. The men who hunted and the women who skillfully prepared the food and clothing were equal and essential partners in the struggle for life. This deep sense of community is reflected in our traditional justice practices. When a conflict arose, the goal was not to punish the wrongdoer, but to restore harmony and balance to the group. Elders would gather the community to talk through the problem, allowing everyone to speak and be heard. The focus was on healing relationships and reintegrating the person who had caused the trouble back into the society. This process, rooted in dialogue and reconciliation, ensured that the community remained strong and unified. It was a system that understood that breaking social bonds was the greatest danger of all in our world. Even today, in our modern towns and settlements, this spirit of community remains powerful. Although we no longer live in igloos, the values of sharing, cooperation, and caring for one another are still at the heart of who we are. People share food from the land, help care for each other's children, and come together to support families in times of need. When you visit an Inuit community, you will feel this warmth and interconnectedness. It is in the way people greet each other, in the constant visiting between houses, and in the shared laughter that echoes in the community hall. This spirit is our greatest strength and our most enduring legacy. In the Arctic winter, families gathered in igloos where talking was like a bright light. Storytelling shared our history, beliefs, and knowledge. Our stories tell of the Tuniat and brave hunters. Passed down through years, these stories connect us to our ancestors. Our language, Inuktitut, perfectly fits our world. We have many words for snow, each describing a special kind. Katajak, or throat singing, is a special way we express ourselves. Two women create amazing sounds, copying the land. Our art also tells our stories through carvings of animals and daily life. Through our stories, language, music, and art, we keep our culture alive. For thousands of years, we faced challenges from the land. But in the last century, a new storm arrived from the south: whalers, traders, missionaries, and the Canadian government. This brought sudden and disruptive changes. They brought new goods and religion, but also diseases. They didn't understand our connection to the land. The government forced families to abandon their nomadic life and moved us into settlements. Our children were taken to residential schools, punished for speaking Inuktitut, and taught to be ashamed. Inuit families were relocated to the high Arctic, promised abundant game, but left to fend for themselves. Thousands of our sled dogs were killed, crippling our mobility and ability to live on the land. This created a legacy of trauma that our communities are still healing from. Despite the trauma of colonization, the Inuit spirit of resilience and ingenuity has not been broken. In recent decades, we have channeled that spirit into a powerful movement of political and cultural advocacy. We have fought to reclaim control over our lives, our land, and our future. The greatest achievement of this movement was the creation of Nunavut in 1999. After decades of negotiation, we signed the largest Indigenous land claims agreement in history, which led to the establishment of a new Canadian territory, governed by and for Inuit. The creation of Nunavut was a profound act of self-determination, giving us back a measure of control over our homeland. Our leaders have also become powerful voices on the world stage, especially in the fight against climate change. The Arctic is warming at a much faster rate than the rest of the planet, and the melting ice threatens our entire way of life. The sea ice we depend on for hunting and travel is becoming thinner and less predictable. The permafrost is thawing, and animal migration patterns are changing. Our very survival is at risk. Leaders like Sheila Watt-Cloutier have brought this issue to the world's attention, framing it not just as an environmental issue, but as a human rights issue. She argues that we have the right to be cold, the right to preserve the environment that sustains our culture. This modern resilience is also seen in the vibrant resurgence of our culture. We are fighting to keep our language, Inuktitut, strong. In Nunavut, it is an official language used in schools, in government, and in the media. The Inuit Broadcasting Corporation creates television programming in our own language, telling our own stories. Young musicians are blending throat singing with electronic music, and filmmakers are creating powerful documentaries and feature films about our lives. We are using modern tools to protect and promote our ancient culture, ensuring that it continues to thrive for generations to come. The journey has been hard, and many challenges remain. Our communities still struggle with the social problems that are the legacy of colonization. Housing shortages, high food costs, and the need for better mental health services. But we are facing these challenges with the same strength and spirit of community that allowed our ancestors to thrive in the Arctic for millennia. We are hunters, artists, politicians, and advocates. We are a modern people, deeply rooted in our ancient traditions, who are proudly shaping our own future on our own terms, in our homeland of Inuit Nunangat. Our voice is strong, and we are determined to be heard. Our story takes us to the heart of the continent, to the riverbanks and prairie grasslands where a new indigenous people emerged. The Métis are a people born from the meeting of two worlds, starting in the 17th and 18th centuries. European fur traders journeyed into Turtle Island relying on First Nations knowledge. Relationships between traders and First Nations women, particularly from the Cree, Saulteaux, and Anishinaabe nations, formed the foundation of the fur trade economy. From these unions, a new generation was born. The Métis, from the French word for mixed. They were becoming a true nation, a distinct political and cultural entity with a shared history. Forged in the crucible of the North American fur trade, the Métis played a crucial role in the development of Western Canada. They established their own communities, economies, and governance, deeply connected to their homelands. The story of the Métis is a story of a nation born. The heartland of the Métis Nation was the Red River settlement, located where the Red and Assiniboine rivers meet. Here, they developed a unique way of life that blended their First Nations and European heritages. They laid out their farms in the traditional French-Canadian style. Within these communities, a vibrant and distinct Métis culture flourished. The sound of the fiddle became the heartbeat of their social gatherings. The Red River Jig is perhaps the most famous of these dances. A unique language also emerged in these communities, Michif, a blend of French and Cree. The existence of Michif is powerful proof of a new and distinct society being formed. The Red River was the crucible where the Métis Nation was forged. The colorful, hand-woven L'Assomption sash represents the pride and history of the Métis people. Worn with pride at gatherings, each color holds meaning. Red represents the bloodshed for Métis rights. The sash was a practical tool, providing back support. Fringes served as sewing kits. It was a constant companion for voyageurs and buffalo hunters. Finger weaving is passed down through generations. Tying on a sash connects the wearer to their ancestors. The infinity sign represents the joining of First Nations and European cultures. It speaks to the eternal nature of the Métis Nation. These symbols are living parts of Métis culture today. While farms provided a home base, the engine of the Métis economy was the Great Buffalo Hunt. Twice a year, massive expeditions would leave the settlement. These were immense mobile communities with families in Red River carts. The hunt was highly organized, requiring discipline and governance. Leaders established the laws of the hunt. The Métis were legendary horsemen riding into the thundering herd. Women prepared the meat for preservation. The most important product was pemmican. The Métis sold pemmican to the Hudson's Bay Company. It was the central pillar of their economy and political identity. In the late 1860s, the Métis world at Red River was about to be upended as the Hudson's Bay Company prepared to sell Rupert's Land to Canada. Canadian land surveyors arrived, ignoring the traditional river lot system. Louis Riel emerged as a Métis leader. In 1869, he led a group that seized Upper Fort Garry. He established a provisional government to negotiate their entry into Canada and drafted a list of rights. The result was the Manitoba Act of 1870. Riel was forced to flee into exile. The Red River Resistance marked the beginning of a long struggle for the Métis to have their rights recognized. The creation of Manitoba did not bring peace for the Métis. Soldiers and settlers were hostile, seeing them as rebels. Many Métis faced violence and discrimination. Promises of land were delayed and a scrip system was implemented, but it was easily abused. Feeling betrayed, many Métis families migrated westward into Saskatchewan and Alberta. By the 1880s, history repeated itself. The government ignored Métis land rights. Louis Riel returned to lead them, but the government refused to negotiate, leading to the Northwest Resistance in 1885. The resistance was crushed at Batoche. Riel was hanged, a devastating blow to the Métis. For generations, the Métis were marginalized, many hiding their identity. For nearly a century after the execution of Louis Riel, the Métis people lived in the shadows. They were often called the road allowance people, as many landless families were forced to live as squatters on the unused strips of land alongside public roads. They faced poverty, discrimination, and the systematic erasure of their history from Canadian textbooks. Riel was branded a traitor, and the Métis were dismissed as a people of the past. But, the spirit of the Métis Nation did not die. In their families and small communities, they kept their stories, their music, and their sense of identity alive, waiting for the day they could rise again. That day began to dawn in the 1960s, as a new generation of proud and determined Métis leaders emerged. They began to organize politically, forming new associations to fight for their rights and recognition. They worked to reclaim their history, challenging the official narrative and fighting to have Louis Riel recognized not as a traitor, but as a patriot, a founding father of Manitoba, and a hero who died defending his people. This political awakening was a slow and difficult process, but it laid the groundwork for a powerful cultural and political renaissance that has been gaining momentum ever since. In 1982, their persistence paid off. The Métis were officially recognized, alongside First Nations and Inuit, as one of the 3 distinct Aboriginal peoples of Canada in the Constitution Act. This was a monumental victory, giving the Métis Nation a legal and political foundation from which to assert their rights to land, self-government, and cultural preservation. Since then, the Supreme Court of Canada has delivered several landmark rulings that have further affirmed the rights of Métis communities, confirming that they hold constitutionally protected rights to their traditional lands and resources. The fight for the full implementation of these rights continues today. Today, the Métis Nation is experiencing a powerful resurgence. The sound of the fiddle is louder than ever. The Red River Jig is danced with pride, and the Michif language is being revitalized. Young people are embracing their heritage, wearing their sashes and learning the stories of their ancestors. The Métis Nation is organized, politically active, and looking to the future with hope and determination. The dream of Louis Riel, the dream of a proud and self-governing Métis Nation with a secure place in Canada, was not destroyed in 1885. It is alive and well, and it is being built every day by the resilient and unbreakable spirit of his people. We have traveled a long way together, walking the ancient lands and seeing the incredible diversity of the First Nations. We journeyed to Inuit Nunangat and followed the Red River carts with the Métis, each story woven together by strength and love for this land. We have also walked through shadows, not shying away from the difficult parts of this story, including the darkness of residential schools. But this is not where the story ends. The most important thread is the power of resilience, the determination to survive and rise again. Despite efforts to assimilate us, we are still here. This journey shows that a people's spirit cannot be extinguished. We are vibrant, modern nations shaping our own future. Reflecting on this path, we see a profound story of strength and the human spirit's capacity to heal. The story of the Indigenous peoples of Canada is not over. The final chapter has not been written. We are living it right now, every single day. The path forward is one of continuing struggle, but also immense hope and progress. Our nations are rebuilding, taking back control of our education, healthcare, and economies. A central part of this continuing journey is the fight for justice and the honoring of our rights. It means seeking justice for the survivors of residential schools and addressing the intergenerational trauma. It is about creating a just and equitable future where our children can grow up with the same opportunities. We are finding strength in our own traditions, turning to our elders for guidance, creating a new and brighter chapter for all the generations to come.
The story of the First Nations, Inuit and Métis, is a fundamental part of Canada's story. It is a history that every person living on this land inherits and has a responsibility to understand. For too long, this history has been ignored or told from only one side, creating a gap in understanding. Now, there is a chance to bridge that gap and learn a more complete and honest version of our shared past. We invite you to continue learning, seek out Indigenous voices, and listen with an open heart. Take up the responsibility of knowledge and become an ally in the journey towards justice and reconciliation. Imagine a country where all our children can learn the true history of this land. It requires all of us to walk this path forward together, side by side, in a spirit of mutual respect. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey, please like, comment, and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.